These suspects should not be approached, and if you do see them, to call 911 or your local police immediately.
Country are warning Canadians to be on the lookout for two suspected killers, as sightings of the men are reported closer to the Ontario border. The OPP in the northwest part of this province have now issued a public safety alert. The suspects are accused of killing a couple in BC. They are also linked to the suspicious deaths of another man whose body was found several hundred kilometers away. Renee Filippone has the latest on this developing story, including reaction from the small Manitoba town about 200 kilometers from the Ontario border, where the fugitive pair were last seen.
Their faces have been plastered on TV screens for days. 19-year-old Cam McLeod and 18-year-old Briar Schmigelski are still on the run and considered dangerous.
You know, these suspects are young, and I think it's very important to realize that they're supporting each other. They're running scared. They don't know what's going to happen.
While police search for the pair, they're also involved in investigating multiple crime scenes across BC, looking for evidence, trying to piece together what happened and how 3 people ended up dead.
When violent incidents occur, we take it very, very seriously, and we take all the necessary steps with the police and otherwise.
The teens are wanted in the shooting murder of a young couple whose bodies were found on the side of the Alaska Highway south of Laird Hot Springs on July 15th. They've also been connected to a second crime scene more than 450 kilometers away, where Schmigelski's burnt-out truck was found close to the body of an unidentified man. The pair have since been sighted driving a 2011 Toyota RAV4 through northern Saskatchewan and northern Manitoba. That vehicle was found burned out on a stretch of highway near Gillam.
Based on this information, we have sent a number of resources to the Gillam area. There will be a heavier police presence in the community.
Tensions are high in the Manitoba community where they were spotted. People are being told to stay indoors and not to travel anywhere alone.
Well, I can totally understand that they might be anxious. I am as well, because it's an unknown. We don't know what's happening right now. We don't know where they are.
In the teens' hometown of Port Alberni, people who knew the suspects are in shock.
My heart is just breaking for all the families, and it'd just be nice if we could get some answers to what's happening and find these kids and just get some closure.
A statement from Cam McLeod's father reads in part, "Cam is a kind, considerate, caring young man, always has been concerned about other people's feelings. As we try to wrap our heads around what is happening and hope that Cam will come home to us safely so we can all get to the bottom of this story." Police continue to warn people, if you see the pair, don't approach them. Call 911 immediately. Renee Filippone, CBC News, Vancouver.
You can track the very latest on this story online. Just head to cbcnews.ca or download the CBC News app.
There's a bunch of guns.
I saw multiple people with guns drawn.
One officer discharged his firearm and Mr. Shea was struck.
Late night scene in Peterborough, a police pursuit, a high-speed crash, then an officer opens fire. Investigators identifying the man struck and killed by a police bullet tonight as a wanted repeat offender. The SIU is now probing what happened. Our Angelina King has been following the story. She joined us now live from Peterborough. Angelina, bring us up to speed on the investigation.
Sure. So right now, the road has reopened. This happened less than 24 hours ago, actually just behind me, just past that first set of lights. So there's still a lot for the Special Investigations Unit to dig through right now. But we do know that they have assigned 6 investigators and 3 forensic investigators to the case. But right now, there's still a lot of unanswered questions that both the SIU and Peterborough Police aren't answering for us right now, including whether any officers have been disciplined and if the suspect himself had a gun. But we did speak with a witness who shed some light on that and described what she saw.
This is the stuff you see on TV.
Cassandra Wildman saw the moments leading up to what she describes as a tense standoff with police that ended with an officer fatally shooting a 27-year-old man. How would you just describe in a couple words seeing this?
Just scary, surreal, very intense.
She was driving on Highway 115 to her home in Millwood around 8:45 last night when she saw a red Mustang driving fast.
and he came flying over the median straight at my vehicle, and I could see that there was a police officer right behind him.
She swerved out of the way, narrowly missing the car, but says the Mustang crashed into the vehicle behind her.
Just a big explosion of debris.
Oh my God.
Then she says she saw an officer draw a gun and point it at the Mustang.
There's a bunch of guns.
In the frenzy, her son recorded this video.
He got his phone out and I had a chance to turn back around again. I saw multiple people with guns drawn. It looked like there was someone in civilian clothes with gun drawn.
The SIU says at around 8:30 last night, police were following a vehicle driven by Billy Shea near Millbrook on Highway 115. Officers believed the vehicle was involved in a number of robberies in the Barrie area. Not long after, the car crashed. Police ran to the scene and tried negotiating with Shea. Then,
Short time later, at approximately 9:40 p.m., one officer discharged his firearm and Mr. Shea was struck.
Shea died in hospital. He'd been the subject of 2 Canada-wide warrants, one issued last month after an armed robbery in Hamilton, and another in May when Shea violated his parole conditions by not reporting to a halfway house. He'd been serving a 5-year sentence for multiple robberies and car thefts. He was released on parole in March. Wildman says knowing Shea was killed makes everything she witnessed even more surreal.
You just realize the intensity of the scene and what you narrowly avoided. I keep saying literally 2 seconds. 2 seconds earlier, and that would have been me, you know, with my teenage son in the car. I had my dog in the back seat.
So one Peterborough police officer has been identified as the subject officer in this case. 7 others and 5 OPP members are considered witness officers. So in this case, the subject officer is the person that the SIU believes caused the death of Shea. Now, subject officers are asked to do interviews with the SIU, but they're not legally required to do so, and they don't have to hand over their notes. It's different, though, for witness officers. Those are the people that the SIU believed are somehow involved in the case, but did not cause the death of Shea. They do have a duty to take part in SIU interviews, and they have to hand over their notes.
Okay, Angelina King reporting live for us tonight in Peterborough. Thank you. Well, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health has ordered an external review of its procedures after 2 recent cases of patients walking away from the building.
Today, I'm announcing an external review of CAMH's process for passes and privileges involving our forensic patients.
The review will look at incidents over the past several months. Earlier this week, a patient walked away from CAMH but was located several hours later. In another incident this month, a 47-year-old man who was found not criminally responsible in the killing of his roommate left CAMH and boarded an international flight while on an unaccompanied pass. CAMH hopes the external review will help rebuild trust in the centre. It's expected to be completed by the end of the year. A man is under arrest tonight in connection with more than 24 break-ins in Peel region this month. Police earlier released home surveillance videos of the man they were looking for. They say the suspect got into homes through unlocked windows and doors. They arrested a 27-year-old man yesterday. He's now facing a number of break-and-enter charges. Police are reminding homeowners to lock their windows and doors. And it was a string of break-ins here in Toronto that inspired a new form of neighborhood watch. A retired data analyst in the Etobicoke is working with Toronto police to build a more comprehensive crime map, allowing the public to see the patterns and protect themselves. Ali Chiasson has the details.
So the sooner we get the officer there, the better.
Criminals, you picked the wrong community. Retiree Jacqueline Murdoch is so much more than the neighborhood watchdog on the block. She's helping police track you down.
Well, I used to work for Toronto Police in years gone by. So I was in the IT department, and we built the new 911 system.
As a mathematician, data is her thing, and she's been advising on the development of the modern Toronto Police crime map.
How long have you been involved?
The 5 years anyway.
And why? What was it 5 years ago that made you think?
5 years ago was that guy going around and break and enter and sexually assaulting women.
It was a rampant spree that went on for 3 summers before an eventual arrest, and Murdoch thought the public needed a more detailed yet accessible crime map.
We do need to look at a higher level, bird's eye view or somewhere in between, where we can see the different layers and we can add things and subtract things to see the patterns, because it's all about patterns. and patterns really is math, which is where I come in.
Thanks to her help, anyone in any part of the city can plug in their location to see what crimes are happening around them, from break-ins to murder.
So it's really important to be able to visualize what's happening and see where the clusters are. And if you can see that from a citizen point of view or the police point of view, you start to see things are happening in certain areas. You can narrow it down in terms of a time factor between this time and this time in this piece of geography.
Someone moves into this neighborhood and they look at this helpful map and they see, okay, there are break and enters that happen here.
Sure.
Then maybe I want to make sure that we're locking the doors. We have security cameras.
What's happening in our neighborhood or in the vicinity around that they should be concerned about? And then they start talking about it among themselves and saying, what are we doing that's maybe not working? What I'm trying to do is get people looking out for other people.
Neighborhood Watch 2.0. It's so much more than that sticker in the window.
Yes, it is.
Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
All morning and all afternoon, it was Mueller time in Washington. But did his testimony actually change deeply held beliefs on both sides of the issue? We'll speak to a New York Times reporter about that after a look at your weather. Nick Cernkovich is here with his first look at the forecast. Another great day today. We're in a nice stretch of weather.
Yeah, we absolutely are, Mike. But you might have noticed that it's notably cooler, but in particular drier today than was, say, last week when we had humidex values in the 40s. Now, that is actually going to change. We'll start to build a little bit more in the way of humidity, and temperatures going to go up as well. Right now, temperatures around 26 degrees across the GTA. That's about our high for today. With that being said, both the temperatures and the humidity are rising over the next couple of days. Now, in terms of precipitation, we've had lots of sunshine through the day today. There's a little system sweeping down from the north. We might trigger off a few spotty showers through the overnight, especially through sort of north of the GTA. But that being said, if we see it, it'll be very short-lived, and it'll be while you're sleeping, for most of us anyway. Tomorrow afternoon, we're looking at a mix of sun and cloud, although with a little bit of instability in the air through the sort of mid-afternoon hours, we could pop off a few showers, but otherwise just a mix of sun and cloud for us heading into Friday as well. Forecast-wise for the next 24 hours, overnight tonight 15 degrees, so a little bit cooler, fresher, and then tomorrow 28 degrees. Humidex, though, making it feel closer to about 34 for tomorrow, and the chance for those afternoon showers. We'll have your full forecast coming up in just a bit.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
You bet.
The former U.S. special counsel was in the hot seat today, appearing before two House committees in Washington. Robert Mueller was closely questioned about his report on Donald Trump and Russian interference in the 2016 election campaign. As Ellen Morrow tells us, Mueller chose his words very carefully.
It was a big day on Capitol Hill, but one with few surprises. Former special counsel Robert Mueller was grilled for more than 5 hours, but he said very little that wasn't in his 448-page report. Democratic lawmakers pushed for this appearance, and they used it to highlight points they see as damaging for President Trump, specifically that Robert Mueller did not exonerate the president, and that Mueller said he was bound by a Department of Justice guideline that says a sitting president can't be charged. Here's the first exchange of the day with House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler.
So the report did not conclude that he did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what about total exoneration? Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
Didn't you publish a lengthy report unfairly?
Republicans, meanwhile, tried to discredit the investigation and Robert Mueller himself, accusing his team of political bias.
It's starting to look like, having desperately tried and failed to make a legal case against the president, you made a political case instead. You put it in a paper sack, lit it on fire, dropped it on our porch, rang the doorbell, and ran.
I don't think you reviewed a report that is as thorough, as fair, as consistent as the report that we have in front of us.
Gentleman from Florida.
Both sides here are claiming victory. President Trump spoke shortly after the hearing was finished.
There was no defense to this ridiculous hoax, this witch hunt that's been going on for a long time, pretty much from the time I came down on the escalator with our First Lady, and It's a disgrace what happened, but I think today proved a lot to everybody.
Democrats, meanwhile, say the only reason President Trump wasn't charged with obstruction of justice was because of that Justice Department rule. Today's testimony will be viewed through a partisan lens, and it's unlikely that any minds already made up before today will have been swayed by what was said. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
We are joined now by the New York Times' Kenneth Vogel. Kenneth, I want to get your impressions of the day's testimony.
Yeah, I think a lot of disappointment for Democrats who were expecting some kind of smoking gun or at least a robust defense and summary of some of the findings of the Mueller report. They did not get that from the special counsel himself. He seemed at times a bit confused, halting in his delivery, and even contradicted himself on some key points.
Was that a question of expectations perhaps being too high going in, even on both sides?
Yeah, I think so. I think Republicans did get a bit of what they wanted, although, you know, they pressed some points that they thought that he might go into some detail on relating to the origins of the report, which they have set out to question, including calling for and supporting an investigation into the origins of the report. But perhaps ironically, Mueller said because of that investigation, he couldn't get into some of the questions that they were asking as they pertain to an ongoing law enforcement matter.
No, I guess Mueller's office even set expectations going in, saying he wasn't going to go much beyond what was actually in his report. Near the end, though, how significant was it when he weighed into topics like his willingness to subpoena Trump?
Yeah, that was interesting. He also, as I alluded to earlier, said that he sort of contradicted himself over this key point as to whether Trump would have been indicted but for some guidance from the Office of Legal Counsel of the Department of Justice that was read as precluding an indictment of a sitting president. At one point, he seemed to suggest that, yes, he would have, or his team would have indicted Trump but for that guidance. He subsequently came back after a break and corrected himself and said that, no, that was not the impression that he was seeking to leave viewers with or the committee with.
It was interesting watching this as an outsider, Kenneth. I think if the transcripts of the day will show the questions from Republicans and Democrats being quite lengthy, his answers quite short. He had some pretty pointed questions as you were talking there. How do you think he did in handling them?
Yeah, like I said, at times he seemed to struggle, and he gave contradicting responses. Other times, and when he did best, just from you know, the perspective of folks who are maybe the special counsel's team or his supporters, was when he just stuck to the material inside the four corners of the report and didn't even try to summarize that material, but rather just pointed back to the report and said, you know, that we'll let the report speak for itself there. But there were other times the Republicans tried to trip him up, and I think did so successfully, where they asked him, there was at one point some conversation about Fusion GPS, this firm that paid for the famous dossier by the former British spy Christopher Steele that was used in some of the early requests for FISA warrants, or was cited at least. And there was a question about, does this refer to, does this part of the report refer to the firm, Fusion GPS? And he expressed some confusion and said he wasn't sure, when in fact that was in the report. So I think Republicans will use points like that to suggest that maybe Mueller didn't have the full grasp of the material that was in the report.
Given all this, at the end of the day, was it worth it to have him step forward and testify about the report?
I mean, I am already hearing some Democrats who are questioning whether it was, in fact, worth it to have him come forward. Republicans always were skeptical of and even opposed his coming forward, and I think they probably have some fodder to suggest that they were right and Democrats were wrong here. It didn't really add a whole lot to the public's understanding of the investigation or the report.
Okay, well, thanks for your insights there. That's New York Times' Kenneth Vogel this afternoon. Thank you.
Pleasure.
What started out as a small local investigation led us to a highly orchestrated, organized crime ring.
Bentleys, Mercedes, Range Rovers, and more. Peel police have shut down a high-end car theft operation, seizing more than $2 million worth of rides. That story coming up after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
A Scarborough dog owner is distraught tonight after he says 3 men stole his family dog during a street robbery last night near McCowan Road and Finch Avenue East.
One opened the knife and then say, "Give me money or I stab you. Give me money or I stab you." I say, "Hey, I don't have money. I just walk my dog. I don't have money." And then he said, "Give me your dog then." And then he wrapped the leash from my hand. Oh, my heart broken. This is like end of the world. It's me and my wife until now cannot sleep. It's like end of the world. It's our part of our families.
Owner Tian Hu says he was walking his toy poodle named Ding Ding, pictured here, late last night when 3 men approached him. That's when one pulled out a knife and proceeded to take the pup. The 3 men also stole his cell phone. Police are asking anyone with information to contact them. And Peel police say they have recovered dozens of expensive stolen vehicles, all being prepped to be shipped overseas. Police from multiple forces arresting 5 people as part of Project Bajan. As Linda Ward tells us, officials believe those arrests are just the beginning.
This looks like a green car, but when you open the door, you can see it's actually white. It's been shrink wrapped to disguise it from detection. This is one of only 500 of these cars made in the world, and police say it's one of 28 high-end vehicles recovered as part of what they're calling a highly organized crime ring.
We have determined that it is sophisticated, it is definitely organized, and it is international. How many people are involved? We're hoping to be able to firm that up in the next few weeks while we continue to investigate. We've acquired a great deal of evidence in the last 24 hours, and we still have to work through that.
Project Bayesian started back in April when police received a tip from the public that led them to a storage locker in northeast Mississauga, where they found several high-end vehicles ready to be sent to chop shops or sent in containers overseas to China or Europe. That's when Peel Police contacted York and Halton regions and the CBSA to stop the fraudsters in their tracks.
What started out as a small local investigation led us to a highly orchestrated, organised crime ring that focused on vehicle thefts and saw nearly $100 million worth of illegal funds in processing those stolen vehicles.
5 men have been arrested and charged. Police believe they were stealing the vehicles through a variety of means, through getting fake IDs and bank loans or through insurance scams. Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown says this puts a dent in a string of auto thefts in Peel region.
This was a real challenge in our community. I can tell you, as mayor, I heard constantly about concerns of car thefts. Clearly there was something afoot, and this is what happens when you give the police the resources to do their job. This has been a lengthy investigation, but when you hear the numbers, in some cases as conservatively as 20 cars stolen a week, it shocks you. And no wonder we were getting these complaints about car thefts.
But still, police say they expect many more high-end vehicles like these have already made it out of the country, and they expect more arrests to be made. Linda Ward, CBC News, Mississauga.
This chef wanted to take part in the Toronto Caribbean Carnival's first ever vegan village. But now she's got a major beef with organizers after she says the price to set up a stand jumped in a matter of days after she put down a deposit.
Literally like less than 48 hours after, I got an email again stating that the price had jumped from $800 to $1,800.
But Carnival organizers are telling a different story. What they have to say when we come back.
Yeah, but it's a good exercise.
A vegan food vendor is upset with the organizers of the upcoming Toronto Caribbean Carnival. Karen Pringle says she paid hundreds of dollars to take part in the festival's first ever vegan village, but dropped out after organizers more than doubled the fee. Now she's trying to get her deposit back. Kelda Yoon has the story.
Karen Pringle has been a personal chef for almost a decade. 2 years ago, she started focusing on vegan dishes.
And what are we making? I'm just making a black bean and Swiss chard stew.
Pringle is part of Black Vegans of Toronto, a group of vendors founded by this man, Joe Thomas.
We go out as a team most of the times. We signed on to Caribana as a team to be part of the Caribbean Vegan Village.
The Caribbean Carnival would have been their biggest event yet. In June, Pringle rented a booth for the village, paying $800. Then she got a surprise.
Literally like less than 48 hours after, I got an email again stating that the price had jumped from $800 to $18.
More than double what she had agreed to.
That's impossible. Like, why would they even do that?
This is Maryland Bell Park, where the vegan village was supposed to be. Pringle says the carnival committee told her that the reason for the price hike was because not enough vendors had signed up.
My first reaction was, one, that's not my fault or problem.
But the carnival's COO, Chris Alexander, has a different story. He says Thomas had initially approached him saying,
yeah, we wanted to bring a vegan village into the festival, and we have 30 or so vendors that we can bring.
He says he gave Thomas a deal under the assumption that's how many there would be, 30.
Well, in any case, they brought in 2 vendors.
Alexander says he had no choice but to cancel the vegan village, and the 2 would have to pay the regular vendor fee of $1,800.
If you're going to come in with 2 of you, then you have to be like a regular vendor.
We never had that discussion, and it's very disappointing when people come in and all they're thinking about is the money aspect of it.
At the end of the day, whether you have 5, 10, 20, or 30 vendors, you put the price down on paper already. It shouldn't have been changed.
Nevertheless, all Pringle wants now is her $800 deposit back.
I tried to call at least 3 times per day or every 2 days. I haven't received it as yet.
It's been over 2 weeks since she asked for a refund, and she's still waiting.
I do feel hurt because, like I said, it's not something I would expect from any community.
Especially her own, Pringle says. Alexander, meanwhile, says he had signed off on the refund and is unsure why Pringle hasn't yet received it. He tells us he will be looking into that. Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Remember, if you have a story you'd like us to look into, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. A man who's been evicted from his home because of an illegal cannabis shop is now filing a legal challenge. His apartment has the same main entrance as the cannabis store, but he says that's where the similarities stop. Now he's fighting for his right to get back into his home. Lorenda Redekop has the details.
This is where Jeffrey Brody says he stays sometimes now, essentially homeless.
Get me in my house! I want you just want to go upstairs. Stay. I want in my house!
Ever since the cafe location on Harvard Street was raided 2 weeks ago, his apartment was on the 2nd floor. He insists he had nothing to do with the unlicensed cannabis shop. Here's his message for authorities.
Let me back home. You have no right to kick me out. You have no right. It goes against my Charter of Rights.
He says he worked in construction but can't now. His lawyer has launched a legal challenge against the province, the city, and the landlord, but not the illegal pot shop that shares the building. The province recently amended the law to allow this type of eviction. His lawyer calls it unconstitutional.
A tenant usually has no power over how a landlord uses the building. And if the landlord does something that contravenes the Cannabis Act, then the tenant, based on the recent amendment, now takes the fall. And we believe that is unconstitutional.
Another lawyer involved in the case sees it as one example of cannabis laws that need to change. Law enforcement have taken to barricading cafes' doors with concrete blocks after other measures to shut them down failed.
The actions of the police and the city officials are quite draconian. It's anti-democratic, it's despotic.
For Brody, his life has been turned upside down.
My life is horrible. I don't like sleeping outside. I started to do good. I gave up that life. I started to do good. And I had a place to stay. And then the city takes it away from me. So what am I supposed to do?
Brody's lawyer is trying to have this dealt with quickly, hopefully in the next few weeks. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a special guest at the Raptors Basketball Academy today at Humber College, none other than Raps point guard Fred Van Vliet.
It's such a impressionable age, and just to be here fresh off a championship. Most of these, if not all of these kids are Raptors fans. They watch the games. Some of these kids were at the parade, and it's just cool to be here with them and share experience, share the day, teach a little bit, play, have some fun, and you know, it's just a really cool day.
Steady Freddy met with more than 200 young athletes this morning, answering questions, playing some ball. It is the 14th year for the Raptors Basketball Academy, a week-long basketball camp that allows kids to develop their ball skills on and off the court. And many of those young fans, no doubt, talking about the Raptors' historic championship. Someone else remembering it fondly? Kawhi Leonard. He spoke to reporters in LA today for the first time since leaving the Raptors earlier this month to join the Clippers. The first thing he said at the presser today, a thank you to Toronto for the incredible season.
You know, I don't have social media, so I'm not able to put out a, you know, paragraph or whatever, but, like I was gonna say, just thank all Toronto, the city, the country. You know, it was a great, amazing season, best parade ever. Thanks to the doctors for, you know, delivering my baby boy. He's 3 months now, still healthy. I also just want to, you know, thank the city as far as the restaurants, you know, giving up that Kawhi and dine throughout the playoffs. Took advantage of that. You know, the players, they already know what's up. You know, text, FaceTime me, we'll talk. Coaching staff as well. And the whole organization, really. Just thank the whole city. Thank you.
Now, Leonard joined Paul George, who is also signed to the Clippers in a blockbuster deal. Leonard says, although his season with the Raptors was something he'll always remember, he's happy to be playing back home and to start a new journey in LA. Leonard reportedly signed a 3-year, $103 million deal with the Clippers with a player option for the 2021 season. Well, the Olympic countdown is now underway. 1 year to go until the Summer Games officially open in Tokyo.
3, 2, Tokyo 2020.
A digital clock set up in the middle of the city today, starting the countdown to July 2020. Now, organizers also unveiling the Olympic medals. They're made from 78,000 tons of recycled gadgets they collected, including over 6 million smartphones. They were able to extract enough gold, silver, and other alloys to make all the medals that will be given out next year.
When I'm amongst this stuff, I get inspired. I play my guitar, and just the weird things come out.
Rockin' at the ROM, Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett is in the city to open his own exhibit all about horror movie memorabilia. We'll give you a sneak peek and speak to the legendary rock star when we come back. Kirk Hammett is best known as the lead guitarist in the heavy metal band Metallica, but you might not also know that he's also a bit of a movie buff, particularly when it comes to horror and sci-fi films. Well, Hammett is in Toronto this week to promote an exhibit at the ROM, which features more than 80 horror and sci-fi movie posters directly from his personal collection. Greg Ross spoke with Hammett earlier today and got a first-hand look at the collection.
Somebody doesn't just get into collecting horror movie posters unless you have a passion for that genre.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I've been into this, collecting this genre ever since I was 5 or 6 years old. I started collecting comic books and monster magazines, and later on, as an adult, I got deeper into the horror memorabilia in general, including movie posters.
More than 80 of Hammett's posters are now on display at the ROM as part of his It's Alive exhibit. They span close to 60 years, dating back to the 1921 movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, all the way up to Alien in 1979. Hammett normally keeps the posters on display in his home, and he says it's been tough to be away from them.
When I come to the ROM and see my collection, it's like seeing like a pet that you haven't seen in a long time.
I heard you say that it actually helps with the creative process.
Yeah, you know, I just have such an emotional attachment to these movies, and such a sentiment, and it triggers just a lot of different emotions, sense of awe, you know, of love for the movie itself and the characters and the plot. I love to play my guitar, and I love this stuff, and just being amongst it, doing what I love to do best, it's a great thing for me.
He's even used the posters for inspiration when designing his guitars, like this one from The Mummy in 1932.
That's the great thing about my guitars, is like I get to play my guitar and look at the poster at the same time.
While you're playing, so that's got to be inspiration.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. And then when I'm not playing that guitar and I put it on the stand, I can appreciate the poster without actually the poster being around.
Would that rank as one of your favorite posters, that Mummy poster?
Yeah, without a doubt. That's why I put it on the guitar, because I love that image.
What's the scariest movie ever?
Oh, well, we talked about it for a second. The Exorcist. For me, The Exorcist, because I was a Catholic schoolboy when I saw that.
Me too.
And it's like, I just knew I was on that list that the devil had, and he was coming for me next.
What do the other guys in the band think of this collection?
They know that this is my thing. I mean, they've seen this ever since I joined the band. I've had a fascination with this. Our late great bass player Cliff Burton was the original zombie lover. He loved Dawn of the Dead. It was his favorite film. He was a big H.P. Lovecraft fan, and he shared a love of horror movies with me.
The It's Alive exhibit is on display at the ROM until January. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
I look forward to checking that out. Well, an Ottawa woman is shocked about what happened to her mother after she missed a connecting flight to Paris last week. She says Air Canada offered a hotel voucher to the 71-year-old because she couldn't fly out until the next day. But as Robin Miller tells us, it came with a very strange catch.
Jerin Mahele Nyota is doing what she can to try and relax. It's been a stressful weekend.
Well, when I found out, I thought, is it a joke? Or is it like, what's going on, you know, like why, who does that, you know? Who does that?
Her 71-year-old mother was set to fly back to Paris from Ottawa last Friday, but when a delay forced her to miss a connection, she was offered a hotel room in Montreal with another passenger. He was a complete stranger, a man half her age.
When the Air Canada agent told her, okay, we just have one room available and you will share it with this guy, the guy also was shocked, was saying, but I don't know her. My mom said, I don't know the guy.
After hours on the phone with Air Canada, Mahele Nyota says the airline did find her mother a room at another hotel, but she worries about what could have happened if she didn't intervene.
I think it's not fair, you know, with people who are vulnerable, you know, that things like that happen because they are depending, you know, on someone, you know, to take care of them.
Air Canada says it's not their policy to have passengers not traveling together share a room. In a written statement, a spokesperson said, "In this case, an error was initially made due to a misunderstanding. After this was realized, the customer was provided a separate room, and we have followed up to apologize for the mix-up." Ariel Roy works for a law firm that defends passenger rights. She says the family should fight for compensation.
No, it's not something that would happen often, but it's sure that one time is one time too many.
Mahele Nyota says she's filed a formal complaint because the whole experience has really taken a toll on her mother. She used to visit Ottawa almost every year and always flew Air Canada. Now she says her mom is nervous to fly by herself again. Robin Miller, CBC News, Ottawa.
The time has come to act, to take decisions, to give strong leadership and to change this country for the better.
Boris Johnson is officially sworn in as Britain's new Prime Minister. More on the tough road ahead for him from London, coming up after the break. Boris Johnson is now officially Britain's Prime Minister, and he's already getting a cabinet together. Today, on the steps of his new residence, 10 Downing Street, Johnson promised to deliver a Brexit deal by the end of October. Cameron McIntosh has more from London.
As he rolled through the gate at Downing Street for the first time as Prime Minister, demonstrators for and against Brexit cheered and jeered, some trying to shout down Boris Johnson as he stepped up to the microphone, unfazed.
The doubters, the doomsters, the gloomsters, they are going to get it wrong again. The people who bet against Britain are going to lose their shirts.
It's that typical brashness that has made the former mayor of London globally known. He addressed the top-of-mind issue, Brexit, promising a better deal.
And we will do a new deal, a better deal, that will maximize the opportunities of Brexit while allowing us to develop a new and exciting partnership with the rest of Europe.
That's what eluded his predecessor, Theresa May, who just an hour earlier bid farewell from the same spot.
Thank you for putting your faith in me and giving me the chance to serve. And I hope that every young girl who has seen a woman Prime Minister now knows for sure that there are no limits to what they can achieve.
Johnson met with the Queen shortly after May resigned and is now assembling his cabinet, likely to be Brexit hardliners. Still, there are a few details on how he'll fulfill his promises.
I have every confidence that in 99 days' time we will have cracked it. But you know what? We aren't going to wait 99 days because the British people have had enough of waiting.
For all of his confidence, the fact is Johnson inherits a country that's deeply divided, deeply concerned, with many very cynical about his ability to govern. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, London.
Nick Cernkovich is back again. It was nice having this break from the humidity, but that's going to change.
Yeah, it is going to change. So especially looking forward to the weekend where a lot of people are outside, maybe you're at the beach. The weather is actually getting a little bit warmer. Now, just to sort of put everything in perspective, here's a look at our almanac board. Now, the average high for this time of year, 27 degrees. So we're just about there today. We're actually going to go above that once more heading through the next few days. Record highs, though, far off, closer to about 35. In terms of the trend, here's what we're looking at. Generally, over the next 7 days, we're looking at a warming trend slightly. Temperatures only going up to about 30 degrees. Well, I'll step out of the way here, but it's that Humidex that's over the next few days going to be up into the mid-30s. So that's what we're watching coming up for the next little while anyway. So it's not just the temperature story, but it's the humidity story as well. Clear skies, or generally clear skies right now. Some rain showers coming down from the north. That's what I was mentioning earlier. We may see a few spotty showers north of the GTA, but for the most part, we're looking at generally clear skies through tonight. As we move in through tomorrow afternoon, that's where, again, we're looking at the risk of a few spotty afternoon showers, especially along the lake here. And that's just with that heat and humidity. There's a little bit more in the way of instability for tomorrow versus what we had today. Into Friday, a mix of sun and cloud as well. So lots of sunshine in the forecast heading through the next little while. And this is a sort of a sweeping front, and that's going to set up this southwesterly flow, which again drives more in the way of humidity heading into the weekend. Overnight tonight, temperatures down to 15 degrees, generally under clear skies and also under drier air. We get cooler overnight lows, so we're sitting at 15 degrees for tonight. As we head through tomorrow, highs to about 28 degrees. Humidex values tomorrow up around 34, and the chance for a few afternoon showers or thunderstorms in the forecast over the next 5 days rather. Temperatures more or less the same. They'll pump up a little bit into Saturday and Sunday, but really it's going to be the humidity story. So tomorrow we're looking at a Humidex value of about 34, but heading into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're looking at Humidex values closer to about 35, 36, maybe even 37, and you're going to pick that up through your overnight lows as well, as overnight lows into Sunday night get up to 22 degrees. So warm weather in the forecast for you, Mike, and right in time for the weekend.
Nice stretch for the weekend. Thanks a lot, Nick.
You bet.
We've spoken a lot about Simu Liu this week. The Kim's Convenience star made headlines after he was cast as Marvel's first Asian superhero. Well, the national co-host Andrew Chang spoke with Liu today about what that role means and about fighting Asian stereotypes. Here's part of that conversation.
Why is this role, landing this role so important for you?
Because there are no other title heroes in the MCU that look like myself or like you. Because, you know, over the last however many years, there have been 2 studio movies featuring Asian leads. Crazy Rich Asians and Joy Luck Club, which came 25 years before it. For me, my journey in this industry has always been about fighting for representation, fighting for, in a way, identity, fighting for the right to belong. And I just think that with this role, this MCU superhero role, I really feel like it's a decisive victory for us. And not to say that we're excluding anybody, but you know, it's really about being seen in a way that we haven't before, because we know, I mean, you and I both know the stereotypes that kind of plague Asian Canadians, Asian Americans, particularly of men.
The big ones in your mind are what?
Big ones in my mind? Should we just call them out? Let's do, okay, so sexual desirability.
Or the lack thereof.
Or lack thereof, right. Exactly. You know, this kind of docile, you know, not traditionally masculine ideal.
Is this why on your Instagram I see like all pictures of you without a shirt on?
Among other reasons, I think, you know, I definitely feel like I had something to prove.
You can catch the rest of that interview tonight on The National. It's at 10 p.m. right here on CBC television. And before we go, we want to let you know, Ding Ding the poodle has been found. Police couldn't say where he was found, only that the owner called him with an update. Have a great night.